This tape meeting is a presentation at Access Incorporated, a community action agency committed to helping people help themselves.
Thank you. Dennis set the stage very well. I did a number of presentations like this over the summer. Most of the time you invite me to come and present this information to them. Usually when I was done, there'd be the kind of horrified silence in the room. I have to remind people they invited me to come and give them that information. A couple of things, quick things first. Thank you for the work that you do. It makes a huge difference. One of Alan's colleagues in the Head Start emailed me a report last week about the test scores, international test scores in education, reading scores. And America's down. We're down pretty far, from where we want to be. But very interestingly, we have the largest percentage of children in poverty in our country of any industrialized nation on the chart there. 21.6% of our kids live in poverty. If you take the 21.6 kids in poverty out of the equation and crunch the data again, American students are at the top in scores. So when you succeed in your work and you help families get out of poverty, it helps across the board. Our kids can thrive, our education system can work if we get our families out of poverty. So I appreciate the work that you do. Dennis set the stage very well of where we are. And the only thing I'm going to add to it before we do some question and answers is that the sense of urgency. You can all see what the figures are saying, but the reality is it has to happen now. The change has to happen now. We don't have the luxury of planning for months about how we're going to adjust the way we deliver services. We have to start now. There have been pilot projects. I brag about Jackson County all the time when I'm up in Salem about the incredible work done around foster care. And a lot of you are part of that work, and tremendous advance in how we're dealing with foster care and the success that we're getting. But that work has to happen statewide now. And I hate to bring this message to you because you already do a tremendous amount of cooperative work. You already have integrated at a very high level what you do. You have to do more. You're going to have to do more. And we're going to do everything we can. We're going to apply for federal waivers. Every place we're going to apply for a federal waiver in order to use money in a more flexible manner. We are going to give time for people, bring people together. And Dennis shares this commitment. We're going to give time. We'll give time. Legislators will give time. Anything you need. If you need a conversation in Salem, we'll help organize a conversation in Salem. If you need to get Bruce Goldberg in a room, you need to get whoever to get into a room to get things done, we'll help you get that done. But it has to happen now. We had an emergency board meeting last month, and we talked about the integration project that was happening in Central Oregon. It's something I'm sure a lot of you are aware of in terms of mental health services and health service moving together. And they give a very nice report about how it's progressing after almost a year of work. And Senator Bates made the comment saying, well, that's great, because their projection was by sometime in 2013, they'll be able to get a larger ability to save money. And Bates's comment was, no, it can't be 2013. It has to be 2011. It has to happen now. That's the only way to get through this. We have to restructure it. We have a governor who's coming in who understands state government, obviously. He's been part of it for a long time. He understands how the process works. And he has committed himself to make sure we shift our priorities in spending to try to get early money into the system, early intervention whenever possible. He's a strong backer of Head Start and their intervention services, strong backer of trying to get the in-home programs for seniors, people with disabilities, stable, making sure we can still provide those services because they're cost-effective and they work. But we still have to change the way that we deliver the services. We're going to have to find the innovative solutions to do so. So that's the only message I bring to you today, and I'll just repeat it over again. It has to start now. We will do our best to stabilize the budget. We're looking at pretty much a flat line, if we can get there, from where we are, 09-11 budget, after the allotment cuts, after the emergency board actions that mitigated some of the allotment cuts. That's our starting point. That's the spending level of 09-11. We actually have a little bit more revenue projected, as Dennis mentioned, if you can trust the projections. We actually have a little bit more in the general fund, lottery fund budget for this next budget cycle. We have about $1.2 billion more than the current spending level we're spending this biennium. However, we're going to have less federal dollars, and the drop in federal dollars is greater than that increase in general fund, lottery fund dollars. That's the reality that we're looking at. So we are going to work tremendously hard to flatline you. If we can flatline you, I will walk away in June saying we succeeded. We've given you the same amount of money for 1113 as we gave you on 9/11. I look at that as a huge victory if we can accomplish it. If we can accomplish it. Right now, there's no guarantee that we can accomplish that. But I will say, just politically, where we are in terms of how the legislature operates, we are starting off, I think, in a very solid place. We have people who are committed to making this work across the board. The work with the emergency board over the last year has been bipartisan. When we mitigated cuts off the allotment, there were unanimous votes. Because people understand, from all political spectrums, people understand our state's in crisis. We have to stabilize, we have to work together, we have to find a way to change the way we do things. And Dennis has been talking about this for a long time, ever since I was in the legislature. Dennis was saying, we can't do current service level, we can't do current service level. And he's pounding the podium on it. Well, now he's got a governor who's saying, we can't do current service level. And he's got, and he's got a Democratic co-chair who's saying, we can't do current service level. We can't do it. We do not have the funding to do it. So there's going to be changes, and I think we're both committed to seeing if there's a way to share the pain across the board. So we're not talking about just human service. Education is flatlined. Public safety is flatlined. Each part of the budget is flatlined, and that's where we are at. And we're going to do our best to try to look at how regions are working together and try to give incentives for regions to work together wherever we possibly can. So I don't like bringing this news. No one likes bringing this news. But that is where we're at. And for the people that you serve and you care about so deeply, it's your responsibility now. It's our responsibility to find the way to get this done. We're capable of doing it. Jackson County shows that we're capable of doing it. We do it all the time, but now we got to do more. So with that, we'll take some Q&A, and again, we'll thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you do, and thanks for letting us harangue you for a little bit.
One request, Peter and Dennis, would you repeat the question that you received from the audience? That would help us with your videotape.
The question was, would you repeat the question?
This guy's quick.
Any questions on that?
I'm curious, with the discussions that you have, is it, when you talk about the budget, is it more about trying to lop something off versus that spread the pain among everyone? Which way does it lean with, as we all struggle with our budgets and we have these discussions?
So the question was, are we looking at lopping things off, or are we looking at just sharing the pain between existing programs? Mine has to be both. We are looking, and this is very difficult. I've had arguments within my own caucus on this. People say, why don't you just eliminate something? And it's integrated. Things are integrated together. Number one, we're not going to eliminate our state parks because Oregon wouldn't do that, and we have lottery money that's the voters have said is going to fund state parks. That's kind of a given. So you look elsewhere in the budget. Where are you going to cut? What program are you going to cut off? And you could cut off Head Start. You cut off early intervention services for developing disabled children, but you're going to pay for that later on. So we have to be conscious of what we're lopping off and the impact it's going to have, not only this budget, but the next budget, next budget, next budget.
Yeah, that it's about perspective too, because when you work in the past with current service level, you get a situation where we were in a debate and the people are listening, and Peter said, we cut $2 billion from our budget. And I said, the budget has gone up 15%. And they're going, huh?
We were both right.
And I'm saying, if you start with current service level and you don't fund it, then that's a cut. And I'm saying if you start where you were at 2 years ago, and if you're adding money, then that's an increase. And so it's really confusing. In the past, we've talked about these kinds of things. What we really need to be doing is try and anticipate in a rational way what kind of revenue do we have, and then analyze how can it best be spent. Because essentially, we are the purchasing agents for the people. And so rather than focus on cutting, we need to be looking, again, what are our core priorities, which priorities should we fund first, and what are we going to buy, what are we going to get the best bang for the buck for the people based on the fundamental core principles of state government. That's a challenge, and it's a transition in the way we look at things. We haven't even started yet, but that's one way to do it. Another way is to go back and say, where could we afford what we have now? Was it 2005? Well, we didn't fall into the ocean in 2005, so what about going back to that period and saying, where were we then? And if we've added new programs since then if we're going to keep them, we have to get rid of something that existed then. I mean, there's different ways to look at it. We're not sure how it's going to be handled. But the first thing we have to do is find out, what kind of revenue do we really expect so that we know how to approach, how to spend it. Other questions?
Right.
Well, I had a question. You mentioned the applying for federal waivers. Can you explain a little bit about what's involved in that process and how that works?
Certainly. The question was about federal waivers, applying for federal waivers. You guys all, most of you know this because most of you run or work at agencies that have federal funding, and you know how it's tied to a certain expenditure. And the feds say, you may spend this money for this purpose and no other purpose. In fact, Jackson County had that interesting thing through DHS several years back, where they gave caseworkers more flexibility. But they gave them a budget and said, use this money in the most effective way possible to serve the family that you're serving. And we got very good results from that. So what we're asking the feds to do in a number of areas to say, let us give us the money. Senior in-home service is a great example of it. Give us the money, take off the restrictions on what we match it with. Let us operate our system when we operate it, and we'll get better results that way. Governor Kitzhaber, when President Obama came and campaigned for John Kitzhaber, the only thing Kitzhaber talked to Obama about, he says, is waivers. He said over and over again, you have to give me waivers, you have to give me waivers, both for health care, just the overall health care system, but all the human services. And our federal delegation is very supportive of this. Senator Murphy, Senator Wyden, they're all pushing to give Oregon as much flexibility as possible with our federal money so that we can hopefully try to address the issues that we have, change our programs in a way that allow us to use the money more effectively, and actually it will be able to show a future. Because as Dennis rightly points out, the federal government cannot maintain their level of spending. It's not possible for them to do. So it gives us a chance to try to set things up, to develop programs that cost less and get better results, because we know the federal dollars won't sustain.
In the past, the federal waivers were hard to come by because you got 50 states, and it just doesn't move very quickly. Governor Kitzhaber has said that he has talked to the feds about it, and that they want a state to lead out, that they're kind of desperate for a model that they can show to other states. And so he said the federal waivers should not be the problem it was before for the next 2 years. He also is the right man to file for them because of his knowledge and his work with the Archimedes movement and so forth. And I actually talked to him after the election, and I said, as you know, I was a supporter of Chris Dudley, but the reality is that you're in a position that you can get things done that Governor Dudley would not have been able to do, because there would have been immediate political barriers, and yet the problems that we face, these are not political or partisan problems. The crisis is real, and so we have an opportunity where, when it's faced by the governor's reset cabinet and the Democratic governor and a bipartisan approach in the House, we can hopefully reach agreements and get whatever waivers that we need to implement them. Other questions?
Well, it's more of a request than a question. I know a few of us have been kicking this around the last few days, knowing this session was coming up, and the speed that you both speak to, the need for speed, is a little bit like, we get it, but we're not sure how to do it. And because moving fast is not, I think either for our government colleagues or our nonprofit colleagues, not something we excel at. So, so I think one of the things that would be helpful is, and this is true for everybody in the room, any exchange of information, any ideas we get from somewhere else, anything we see, hear, learn, read, that would help us inform this process and move quickly would be enormously helpful, because we're all a little bit
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But
It would be, the question is how do we coordinate information so that we can learn from other people's experiences around the state? And that is something that we might be able to help with, because if we have the contact information for CAPO and for other organizations, and we get good ideas from Pilot Rock, we can say, consider this. Maybe we ought to have kind of a maybe monthly or maybe more frequently a dissemination of information. Maybe we have a common web access where people come in and put ideas together. If you haven't gone to OregonTransformation.com, it's a website where we're gathering information and suggestions from all over the state. Last time I looked, we had over 1,000 ideas that come in, because we're looking for solutions, and the solutions they're not going to come from the legislature. They're going to come from the people that understand how things work on the street.